As you may know, the NFL recently agreed to pay $765 million to settle a class action concussion lawsuit filed by former players. Now attorneys for the NCAA and 4 former student athletes are meeting Friday to discuss a possible settlement in a lawsuit alleging a college sports governing body failed to do enough to educate players and prevent and treat concussions. If the suit goes forward, it could dwarf what happened in the NFL. Fox Sports investigative reporter Kevin Vaughn has more.
In 1906, President Teddy Roosevelt helps form what comes to be known as the NCAA. Its mission? To protect young people from the dangerous and exploitive athletics practices of the time. That was the mission 100 years ago, and it remains an integral part of the mission today.
I was having seizures, blackouts, where my teammates would say, "You didn't even know who we were yesterday."
The headaches probably lasted for 2 or 3 months, to the point where they were like migraines.
Adrian Arrington was a safety for Eastern Illinois.
And today to be out there and show my dad that I made it to college to play football was very exciting. So I did any and everything I could to show coaches that I wanted to be out there to play football.
Angel Palacios was a soccer player at Ouachita Baptist University.
I had the dream at 4, but it's really not something that I thought was going to be possible until I was playing competitively.
Both Adrian and Angel suffered concussions while playing their sports. Were you ever knocked out in the game?
Oh yeah, there was one time my parents came in the training room, and I didn't even recognize who they were.
Arrington and Palacios are now co-plaintiffs with 2 other former student athletes in a lawsuit that says the NCAA failed to provide them proper medical treatment and offered little education on the consequences of concussions. Joseph Siprit, the attorney for the plaintiffs, alleges the NCAA was more concerned about liability than it was about safety.
Continuing to turn a blind eye and continuing to essentially pretend as though the concussion issue isn't as severe as it is, those are the things that we say make the NCAA negligent.
That negligence could potentially result in a groundbreaking settlement. The NFL recently agreed to pay out $765 million to up to 24,000 former players. The number of former collegiate athletes who may be affected could reach over 10 times that number. The NCAA injury surveillance system estimates that between 2004 and 2009, there were over 29,000 total concussions in NCAA sports, more than half attributed to football. It also found that concussion incidents were increasing 7% per year, and that a college player was 3 times more likely to get a second concussion if he or she returned within 10 days of the first one. Travis Leach is a Phoenix attorney and member of the Arizona Governor's Council on Spinal and Head Injuries. Leach says the NCAA has taken a step in the right direction when it finally issued its concussion management policy.
In my opinion, I think they made the right decision in 2010 to require the member institutions to set forth a plan covering concussion treatment. The challenge is, can they require a heightened standard to every university?
University of Houston quarterback David Pylan started 10 games last season.
Making that fun play, making that exciting moment, a memory that kind of lasts for a long time. Those are always special, and you always hold on to those, even if they were in Pee Wee. Some of those memories are just as special as college games.
He decided to stop playing football on October 8th of this year, his junior season, due to the effects of multiple concussions.
Spent 2 days in the hospital, and then about a week at home in a dark room, kind of on bed rest. My mom would take care of me. Really blurred vision, couldn't really see very well. A bunch of different symptoms that I hadn't had before.
The NCAA never had an official concussion policy until just 3 years ago. What's more alarming, according to critics, is that it establishes no minimum standards. Each member school sets its own guidelines. Fox Sports has obtained concussion management plans from more than a dozen schools across all divisions. They vary widely in language and requirements. Under the NCAA policy, there is no review of the plans, no enforcement of the plans, and no standardized protocol for when an injured player can return.
They say, okay, take a week off. What are you doing in that week? Are you watching film? Are you doing a walkthrough? because that's all stress on the brain. So instead of your brain resting, you're stressed out because you've got to play in a week.
Hyland says he received excellent care from his school's medical team, including Dr. Walter Lowe, who also serves as team doctor for the Houston Texans. Dr. Lowe would like to see the NCAA follow the NFL's lead when it comes to concussion protocol.
There's a much wider variation of treatment of NCAA players, I believe, from what I've seen, than there is at the NFL level, where we have structured guidelines, not only of what happens on game day, what happens the day after, when we can institute testing and treatments and return to play.
The NCAA issued a survey to its school's head trainers in 2010. Only 48% responded. The results were presented at the NCAA Concussion Summit that year. They showed that more than half of the schools did not require physicians to see all student athletes who sustained a concussion. Chris Nowinski played college football at Harvard and went on to a career as a pro wrestler. After suffering several concussions, he co-founded the Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy at Boston University and is one of the nation's leading experts on concussion education. Nowinski says even pro wrestling is ahead of the NCAA when it comes to education about head trauma.
I guarantee you they have a better concussion education program, because I wasn't even the first person to talk to them about it. Yeah, it is odd that WWE has a better handle on this issue in college sports.
The NCAA declined our interview request, but did issue the following statement. While the NCAA continues to believe these allegations are inappropriately made against the NCAA, we are willing to consider reasonable mediation options that address student-athlete health and safety concerns, which has always been our priority. Critics contend that the most egregious rule under the current NCAA policy is that players are required to sign a statement accepting responsibility for reporting on their own head injuries.
We do want them to tell us if they feel like those things have happened, but can we rely on them to be the sole reporter of it? Well, we definitely cannot.
Putting the onus on the athlete is preposterous, and it's unethical, and it's, I hate seeing the blame the athlete mentality, because they have brain injuries.
Roosevelt said, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing. Since 2010, the NCAA believes it has been doing the right thing. It will be up to a federal mediator to decide whether that is enough.
In terms of my future, not to be able to work with kids or to be with my kids by myself, it's scary to me to be like, if I'm going to have seizures for the rest of my life, my shoulder not going to work. What can I teach these kids or do with these kids to be an example for these kids?
I hope it just sets a better precedent for the players to come, so that none of them have to go through what I had to go through. And that basically there's a standard for concussions, so that they're not forced to be put out there before they're ready.
Now, the two sides don't reach an agreement. The plaintiffs will renew their push to have a judge grant their lawsuit class action status. If that happens, any former player could then ask to be included if they had any injuries while playing their sports, or file their own class action suit.
The Thursday night are still going. Miami